Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Ethical Society of St. Louis. My name is Mary Ann Perkins. My pronouns are she, her, and I serve on the Board of Trustees here at the Ethical Society. We're delighted to kick off this weekend's co-sponsored events with the Skeptical Society. And we want to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you, especially those of you who are with us for the first time. I'd like to take just a second to orient you a little bit to this extraordinary building. The exits are at the back and also at the sides of the room. Please feel free to use the exits at any time if you need to leave the meeting during the presentation. The bathrooms are just outside and to the left and then down the hallway. Please don't eat or drink in this room, and please silence your phones if you have not already. Thank you for protecting this space and for protecting the time that we'll share this evening. Some of you will recall that the Ethical Society and the Skeptical Society have teamed up before. In fact, just last year, we were very proud to bring Seth Andrews to St. Louis, and we're back now with another set of co-sponsored events, this time with Melanie Trecek-King. Before we welcome our speaker to the stage, we would like to hear from our co-sponsors. Our partnership is both useful and meaningful, especially at this time when divisions run deep, communities fracture, and the inclination may be to circle the wagons and harden barriers against those we see as not enough like us. That inclination is worthy of our skepticism and our humanism. And so it is my pleasure to now invite the president of the Skeptical Society Board to the stage. Please give a warm welcome to John Russell.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction. Just a little bit about the Skeptical Society of St. Louis. We promote our goal, our reason for being is to promote critical thinking. We believe the scientific method works. We believe things like like vaccines do more good than harm, things like that. And we try to provide an inclusive group for people that may be uncomfortable talking about topics like that in workplace, family place, whatever. We're a very informal organization. The only real formality we have is a board of directors. I feel a bit embarrassed to be up here because my board of directors has done all the work in the past year and will likely continue to do so for the coming year or two. So I know we have some of my board here. If they'd like to stand up, I would appreciate it because they are the ones that really do the work. Some of the things we do, we typically, when we bring speakers in solo, it's usually something we call Skeptics in the Pub, and we usually have it at a big brew pub that's got a event room, something like that. We do enjoy co-hosting at beautiful facilities like this. Bring relatively like-minded people together, exchange ideas, just a sense of broader community, which I think is nice, and like has been said, especially in these times. We do not have regular meetings. You can find us on Meetup. You can find us, we have a Facebook group. We have a website, Skeptical Society of St. Louis. Basically, we schedule our events mostly around when we've got wonderful speakers. Melanie has spoken to us in the past and drew a large crowd at that event as well. And we were really excited when she came back through St. Louis because she's a fantastic speaker and presenter. We do have some I think exciting news. We're trying to pull together something we call a Skeptic Camp this year, which again I use we when I should not be using it, because again, my board has done 100% of the work on that. But save the date, May 17th. It's similar to this, but an all-day event where several speakers will be coming in with breakout events and things like that. We'll publicize that. I think it's exciting and a big deal because it's the first one that we've held since I've been associated with the Skeptical Society, and the first one post-COVID for St. Louis. So pretty exciting. We hope to see some faces there. Like I said, and we don't always have speakers that are skeptics in the pub. Sometimes it's just purely a social gathering. We tried to schedule them every month. Now we try to schedule them every 2 or 3 months if we haven't had a speaker in that time. I can't say we're terribly prompt about it, but we do try to get out there and have events where people can get together. And the reality is we make new friends and see old friends. So with that, I will turn it back over to our wonderful hosts. I didn't know what to choose.
Thank you, John. That's exciting. There are a lot of great things coming up. Thank you for sharing that. I'd now like to invite the president of the Ethical Society Board of Trustees to say a few words. This is Scott Wright. Give him a hand.
Thank you, Marianne. The Ethical Society of St. Louis is a multi-generational humanist congregation where people come together to explore the biggest questions of life without reference to scripture, supernatural beliefs, or dogma of any kind. Like traditional religious congregations, we host Sunday morning meetings of our members and visitors to be in community, to listen to music and speakers who inspire, educate, and remind us of our highest ideals, and then connect over coffee after the meeting. We offer robust secular youth education programming from kindergarten through high school, and we have many member-led groups that may be of interest to you, such as Climate Action Now, which just did a honeysuckle cleanup this morning, Vegetarian Potluck, Humanist Hangouts, which just had a spring equinox luncheon this afternoon, book clubs, peer support groups, and more. You can find all that and more in our newsletter, which there's a QR code in the back, and we hope you'll connect with us in person or online. Thank you very much.
In addition to the QR codes that are in the back for our newsletter and other activities, we have baskets for donations and QR codes as well. If you appreciate events like this and you would like to see more of them, your donations are very, very welcome, whether cash or electronic. So I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker this evening. She is the creator of... Sorry, I thought that was coming through. Sorry, I thought that was coming through my mic. Oh, thanks. Our speaker tonight is the creator of Thinking is Power, an approach to teaching critical thinking in an accessible and entertaining way. She is a fellow of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry and an associate professor of biology at Massasoit Community College, where she teaches the general education science course designed to equip students with empowering critical thinking, information literacy, and science literacy skills. An active speaker and consultant, she loves to share her teach skills, not facts approach with other science educators and to help organizations meet their goals through better thinking. She is the education director for the Mental Immunity Project and the Cognitive Immunology Research Collaborative, which aim to advance and apply the science of mental immunity to inoculate minds against misinformation. You can find her all over social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, at Thinking Powers, and at her website, thinkingispower.com. Please welcome Melanie Trecek-King.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here. And I have to tell you, tonight's talk is a bit more personal for me than normal, but we're amongst friends, so go nicely on me. So misinformation, I come at this from, I'm a biologist, and I've been teaching general education biology to people who don't want to be scientists when they grow up. And with as much as I love biology, I realized that what students actually needed to do was to learn how to think better and to be better consumers of information. And to do that, they not only need to know how misinformation works, they need to know why we fall for it, right? We all have vulnerabilities to various kinds of misinformation. So by teaching students how to think better, hopefully they can find more reliable information and not be fooled by misinformation. So this is my story of falling for misinformation. Misinformation, though, is sticky. When I say it's a trap, first, it's alluring, meaning that it appeals to the parts of us that want to believe something or doesn't want to believe something. It also is sticky once it's there. Like once it works its way into our mind, it is really difficult to dislodge, which is why it's so important not to fall for it in the first place. So, I grew up in western Iowa. Okay, I had to figure out buttons. I grew up in western Iowa, a town called Logan. I graduated with 39, and that was half my county, so 3 towns. If you look at Main Street here, the stoplight's relatively new. By the way, when I was growing up, there was no stoplight. Actually, to this day, I learned how to drive in a cornfield. I can drive a tractor, but I can't parallel park. I will drive around the block until I find something. So the stoplight is new, but if you look up on the left, my parents had a restaurant in town. It was the diner in town, and they bought that from my grandparents. Also, fun story, the day after my parents took it over from my grandparents, my mom literally burned it to the ground. So they rebuilt, and I spent most of my childhood there. In many ways, it was really fun growing up there. I mean, I grew up, sorry, I have buttons. It's a very rural farming community. I grew up playing flashlight in cornfields. Anybody play? Yeah. Partying on level B roads. I am so glad I didn't have social media growing up. I would have gotten in so much trouble with it. And here was my parents' diner. Here's me. My grandma made me that dress, and I unfortunately was wearing that to a friend's party when she passed away from a brain tumor in 2nd grade. The thing is, like, the area was so small and tight-knit. You knew everyone. And the joke in rural Iowa, at least, I don't know if you have a similar joke here, but there's an equal number of churches and bars. So, this was my church. It was a Church of Christ. I did not take this picture down here. I actually got it from their Facebook page. They used to do this when I was growing up too, where before school, the kids would pray outside of school. We had youth club. We had Sunday morning services. Like, the whole community revolved around the church. And my parents did the best they could, right? Like, you send your kids to church. That's what you do. And church was life and community. And so if you didn't go, you weren't part of the community. I went on to the church website before this talk, and I found what they believe, and much of this is what I was taught. I'll talk to you more about this in a second, but the Bible is the inspired word of God and the final authority. Literal word of God is what we were taught. God created the heavens and earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh. Marriage is between one man and one woman. Life begins at conception. This is a fundamentalist church. The famous Christian, conservative, Republican, in that order. All of these things were the same. Like, to be a part of the church was also to be a good conservative, and it was also so be a Republican. Let me show you one bit further what I mean. Do you know who Steve King was? Not the author. Okay, so Steve King was a member of the House of Representatives from like 2003 to 2020, I want to say. So he, in 2019, I believe, was censored by House Republicans for being too racist. And so he lost his primary after that because he was basically lost all of his power in Congress. This is a tweet from him. And you're going to have to apologize. I'm not going to read it. For those of you who don't know, by the way, I'm married to a black man. We've been married for 25 years, and it is very uncomfortable to go back there. It's gotten better over time, but I'm not there for a reason. So, we were taught that the earth was created in 6 days, and then God rested on the seventh. And these are things, this is what I mean by personal. When I was putting together this talk, I had to go back through the recesses of my brain to remember what I had been taught, and a lot of it I had pushed back. So we were taught that God created the earth in 6 days, about 6,000 years ago. And, wait a minute, now I'm just pressing buttons. Okay, so 6 days, you can see the order right from Genesis. Okay, all species are created in their present form. They're not related. That evolution was lies from the devil. That creation science was a valid alternative to evolution, and we should teach the controversy. Before the fall, the world was perfect. There was no death or predation. In fact, dinosaurs and humans lived at the same time, and dinosaurs there were no carnivores. They were herbivores. I don't know. Okay. And that Noah's flood destroyed the world about 4,000 years ago, and animals 2 by 2 got onto the ark, and everything is descended from them. In this worldview, we were taught that it explains geological formations, that it explains, so a flood of evidence. Here's the layers of the Grand Canyon. So when you look at the Grand Canyon, the different layers that you see are the layers that were formed when the flood went through and deposited them in those layers. Before the flood, there was a wall of water around the earth that shielded the earth, which is why earth was perfect, and why humans in the Old Testament, or at least men, could live to be hundreds of years old. But the point was, there was evidence, right? We had evidence. We were taught evidence, and that the other side was evil. So we needed to arm ourselves. Okay. So some of the evidence, no transitional fossils. There's excuses for why we think we have transitional fossils, but we don't. Irreducible complexity. Are any of you been taught this stuff? Okay, things. Yes. So irreducible complexity, the idea that things as they are so complicated that they couldn't possibly have evolved independently. This is the bacterial flagellum, the eye, the vertebrate eye is another example that's commonly used. Radiometric dating is wrong, obviously. The second law of thermodynamics. Okay, so the second law of thermodynamics is that the increase in entropy, and if what we have is an increase in complexity in biological systems, then it would violate the second law of thermodynamics. Of course, this isn't a closed system. We're not in a closed system, but and random chance could not account for the life that we see. There are so many misconceptions here about what evolution actually is. Like who any biologists amongst us? Okay, you are exempt from the quiz later. Okay, but the point is, it had to be perfectly designed. It was perfect, so it had to have been designed. Okay, it's never been observed. Actually, this is one of those, as a science educator, I get this misconception all the time. Like, how would we know? No one was there to see it. Like, okay, let's play that game. Imagine a detective showing up on a crime scene, and there was no eyewitnesses. What if they said, I don't know, we'll never know. Right? There are other ways to collect evidence. Oh, and sometimes the eyewitness testimony is amongst the worst form. Okay, no one was there to see it. Oh, we evolved from monkeys? That's a real tweet, by the way. It's just a theory. I mean, he's not wrong. It is a theory. This is one of those words, whenever I talk about it online, like, it's like dropping a bomb and just like letting the fights play out. You have to have faith to accept it. There are frauds. Why do we know about the frauds? Science. And we're going to see here, in misinformation, if you dig down far enough, you're almost always going to get to a conspiracy. There's really no other way to explain why the vast majority of experts or reliable sources disagree with a conclusion. They must be conspiring. Okay, so I'm going to come back to my story, but let's put some context around it. We come to our beliefs in a variety of ways. If we start at the center here, we're not blank slates. We come built in with biases and a tendency to recognize patterns and intuitions and emotions. And then we build on those beliefs from largely two sources. One is our personal experiences, and the other is from the wisdom from people around us. I love to travel. My husband and I have been fortunate to travel to something like 50 countries now. One of the most fascinating was Vanuatu. So we were in Australia and just looking for where we could go for cheap, and Vanuatu was like a $90 flight. Like, okay. Had to look up Vanuatu, like, what is this? It's an island archipelago in the middle of the South Pacific. It's very isolated. And people have been there for something like 1,500 years, maybe a little bit longer, and they've been very isolated during that time. Actually, when we got there were still people in the Stone Age. And one of the things that struck me was, have you heard of the John Frum cargo cult? Okay, so in World War II, when the United States was fighting Japan, we would find our way to islands and then hop to the next island, right? So we'd establish a base, bring munitions and supplies and so on, and then move on to the next one and work our way there. And we got to Vanuatu. And they had never seen Westerners before. They had never seen blue jeans or airplanes or Spam, right? All of these things, they thought that, what, this must be magic, right? The famous Arthur C. Clarke quote. So this religion developed based on it, and it's called, we call it the John Frum cargo cult. Every year on February 15th, there's John Frum Day. And on John Frum Day, they wear blue jeans and paint USA on their chest in red, white, and blue. They use like makeshift out of bamboo, like guns. They build runways and like bamboo airplanes. They sing American patriotic songs. They don't really speak English, but they've got the songs. They've got an American G.I. Joe picture that they're worshiping. What they're trying to do is get John Frum to come back and bring them more advanced technology. And I was reading afterwards, I was so fascinated by this, and I was reading an interview in the Smithsonian with one of the priests there. And the author, the writer, was, it's been like 80 years at this point, and you're still waiting for John Frum to come back. And he goes, well, you've been waiting for Jesus for like 2,000 years. Okay. And so for me, like, I remember, this seems kind of strange, but then, man, it was so eye-opening because I thought, well, what do I believe that they would think is equally as odd? And only think that because they hadn't been exposed to it, right? We adopt the beliefs of people around us. We get it from parents, from teachers, from clergy. Just seeps in through culture, and it gets in there, and we don't even think about it. We don't even stop to ask ourselves, where did that come from? And it's only when we're exposed to somebody who doesn't believe those things that we stop and go, wait a minute, maybe I should question these assumptions. That's the real power of diversity, by the way. Diverse perspectives help us see things that we would not be able to see on our own. But we have to be open to it. And then once it gets in there, like, yeah, obviously I'm right. And confidence is an interesting thing, confidence in our beliefs. There are scholars that say that knowledge, confidence in our knowledge is a feeling. Like it's something that happens to us. And once it's there, have you ever tried to talk to somebody who's really confident about something, but really wrong? Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize in part for his work on cognitive biases, was once asked, if you had a magic wand and could rid the world of one thing, what would it be? And he said, overconfidence. You can't learn when you're confident. But the problem is you don't know you're overconfident. You just think you're right. As a science educator, this has been a really hard lesson for me. We tend to operate under what's called the information deficit model, which is the idea that if somebody doesn't accept science in particular, the problem is they don't have enough information. So the solution to that is more information. And then you start to wonder, why aren't they learning? Why aren't they convincible by this really awesome evidence that I have? So Willard Van Orman Quine instead proposed the web of beliefs. So imagine in your head you have a web of all of your beliefs. They're all connected in some way. At the very center are our core beliefs, the ones that are the most important to us and also the most resistant to change. But they're connected to all of the other beliefs as well. So if I'm trying to talk to a student, or maybe in my past, or actually future, present me, talking to past me who was a creationist, here's why you're wrong. Here's all of your evidence, right? Why aren't you learning? Why aren't you convincible? Well, you must be stupid. Okay, let me try again. Keep going at it, when the problem is you can't just pluck out a belief and expect the person to take in the new belief and incorporate it into their web. Their web helps them understand the world as it is. It forms a coherent whole. We like consistency over gaps, and we don't even mind inaccuracies because it helps us make sense of things. So when we're talking to other people who we might be trying to address a certain belief, remember, that's probably attached to other things. And the elephant in the writer, I love this analogy. This is like Kahneman System 1, System 2, but elephants are charismatic. So the idea is that imagine in your head you have an elephant and then a rider on top of your elephant. So the elephant is the part of your brain that is emotional and biased. It does not need any effort to make decisions. It's always on, operating in the background. It's emotional, it's tribal, it's biased. And there's a rider on top of the elephant. So the rider is the part of your brain that you think of as you, like the part that can form complex arguments and convince people why I'm right and you're wrong. But the rider's on top of that elephant. And the elephant is really hard to control. And it takes effort to do that. So most of the time, instead, we go, you know what, the elephant must be right about this. I'm going to go with it. Don't even think about it. And then, well, why do you believe that? And then your rider starts to formulate all those reasons in hindsight, right? It's working backwards. It got to a conclusion through illogical ways, through personal experiences, things that we hear around us, through our emotions and biases. And then once we get there, we can find reasons to support basically anything we want to believe. And the more motivated we are, the better we are at it. And actually, the smarter we are, the better we are at it. Intelligence doesn't necessarily protect us from this. What intelligence can do is help us make arguments for things that we came to illogically. All right. So enter misinformation. Misinformation is false or misleading information. It does not depend on the intent of the person. Misinformation that's spread intentionally is called the disinformation. So in this case, we're just talking about information that is somehow false or misleading. And there's a lot of it. I'm writing a book about misinformation as we speak, and wow, is there a lot of it. And it's a really complicated subject. Nevertheless, there are reasons that we fall for misinformation that basically boil down to our rampaging elephant. Misinformation appeals to our elephant. So it aligns with what we already think is true. So imagine you're scrolling through social media and you see something, and it fits with your web of belief. Why would you question it? That takes energy and time. It seems true. Right, I accept it. Emotions. Fear and anger in particular are really good at overriding our ability to think critically. Outrage sells on social media. If you feel yourself being emotionally triggered by a post, it's a pretty good sign that you might want to practice some emotional skepticism. Stop and ask, wait, is that true? Motivated reasoning. This is the identity needs, biases, desires. If I want something to be true, or if I don't want it to be true, I'm motivated to find justifications. Repetition. The more I hear it, the more the brain mistakes fluency for truth. This is really a danger in an echo chamber. Intuitive thinking, this is the fast automatic thinking, but misplaced trust here. Have you heard the phrase post-truth? Okay, it was actually the word of the year, right, several years ago, sign of the times. But actually, I'm not sure I like this phrase, because if you ask most people, they do care about truth. They say they care about truth. The problem is they've placed their trust in sources that don't necessarily deserve it. So there are some scholars that are calling it post-trust, not post-truth. And the more polarized we become, the more we retreat into our tribes that tell us we're right about something and that the other side is not only wrong, but evil, can't give them any ground. And so we retreat more and more into, well, I'm placing trust into my tribe, not a good source. So some of the biggest drivers here, especially for the kinds of misinformation that we're going to talk about, are ideology. I love this meme here. Like I hear people talk about science denial, almost like it's a person who denies science. That's not how it works. We don't deny all science. We deny specific science. And it's the specific science that conflicts with those desires and identity needs. With solution aversion. So solution aversion is not liking the potential solutions to a problem. If you have, I'm going to put books on your reading list. If you haven't read Merchants of Doubt by Naomi Oreskes and Eric Conway, do it. What they did was they documented a strategy of denial, what they called the tobacco strategy. It originated with the tobacco companies, and the same scientists and think tanks and funding sources all went straight to ozone denial and climate change denial. The scientists themselves were not motivated by money. The scientists were former Cold War actually, some of them had been involved with the Manhattan Project. And when they got done fighting World War II, they went on to fighting communism, and they were ideologically opposed to government. So, something like cigarettes, you kind of have to regulate. But regulation is government. So what they did instead was they denied the problem. Climate change denial, COVID denial. I mean, put a modern form of science denial. And it tends to be motivated by tribe, once it becomes part of our identity and our group, but also what we want and don't want to do. And then, this idea of a personal brand, right? When I signal who I am, I wear a cross, I wear a skeptic, a necklace. I put a bumper sticker on my car. I mean, nothing is inherently wrong about that, of course, but as soon as we put out to the public, this is who I am, I have attached my belief to me. I don't want to be wrong. So I will defend the belief because I'm defending myself, really. So the kinds of misinformation that really come into play here with my story are science denial and pseudoscience. Science denial is motivated by not wanting to believe. And when we don't want to believe, we set our standard of evidence impossibly high. Pseudoscience is motivated by wanting to believe. And when we want to believe, we set our standard of evidence very low. And they often play on each other. I'm going to show you an example here with evolution and creationism. But let me show you an example. At this point, as a science communicator, there's a few things that apparently trigger me. The Galileo, I'm like Galileo, is one of them. It's called the Galileo Gambit, where people will literally say, well, they called Galileo a denier, which is supposed to mean that, well, I must be right too. There's lots of problems with that. Like Galileo was not totally against the consensus at the time. Fellow scientists were convinced by his evidence. It was the church that put him under house arrest. And the reason they did that was because they were ideologically opposed to the idea that the sun was the center of the solar system as opposed to Earth. They have all of that wrong. Nevertheless, and here, this is the Journal of Creation Research. If you look through these journals, they look sciencey. If you didn't know any better, it looks like a science journal. It's not full of research. It's full of case studies, anecdotes, and people throwing shade on science without evidence. It also has lots of big words, like sciencey words. They're mostly used wrong. Nevertheless, it's gone through the pretending to be science. Enough that if you wanted to believe this, it's convincing. I know, I was there. And then finally, if you dig down far enough, you get to the conspiracy. You gotta laugh at Bigfoot. Actually, I went to my first Bigfoot museum recently. It was a fascinating experience. The woman was a true believer, and she was very lovely. Had all kinds of reasons for why she thought she was right. There was like sightings along rivers, because apparently the only animal that likes water is Bigfoot. There was tree breaks, because like nothing besides Bigfoot can cause a tree to bend. We went through the museum and finally got to, it wasn't just Bigfoot is a thing. Like there was a room with Mothman and Chupacabra, aliens at Roswell, mermoose. Have you heard of mermoose? Mermoose. Okay, so we kept on keeping on, and then finally got to, she knew I was a biologist, so she came out to greet me at this point and escorted me into the next room where she had, she went on a dig, an archaeological dig with Carl Baugh, who is a creationist, who is the one who claims to have found Bigfoot, no, I'm sorry, dinosaur and human footprints next to each other. It's been so debunked, by the way, that other creationists also disavow him. Nevertheless, this was really important to her. And in the Bible, there's Nephilim, the giants. So apparently, giants, I'm going to get some of this wrong, but because it doesn't make sense, but giant skeletons were uncovered during a flood in early mid-century Nebraska. And they were taken to the university's science museum. And so she called the science museum to see the skeletons, and they had disappeared. And so apparently she talked to a janitor, and the janitor said, "Call me after hours." So she did, and they had a long overnight conversation where apparently the evidence is missing because the government took it. Okay, and there it is, right? You dig down far enough, and it has to be a conspiracy. There's really no other way to explain it. Here, for example, one thing these educational TV series on evolution used to make their story look so convincing are the millions and millions of years? No. Dollars. I know lots of scientists. They're not living large. And also, getting that many people to keep a secret would be nearly impossible, especially a juicy one like that, right? That's how you win Nobel Prizes and go down in textbooks. Nevertheless, this argument, again, is really convincing to someone who does not want to accept science. It's much easier to just cast shade and say, well, they're all conspiring because they're in it for money or so on. Now, importantly, there are real conspiracies, and that's important. But if we want to find them, conspiratorial thinking won't help. We need critical thinking. I can give them examples of real conspiracy theories. No, real conspiracies. And here's how we know. And that's the difference. So pseudoscience and science now often play on each other. This was from a textbook in Atlanta. All right. Creation, Christ, Christianity, all things good. Look at all things bad. Apparently, porn, divorce. Yes. When we want to believe something, like creationism, we set our standard of evidence low, but we have a problem because there's a parallel scientific theory that has lots of support. How do we deny that, right? So in order to deny that, you have to fill it in with the pseudoscience. And it's a yin and yang kind of thing. They play off of each other. They're like two sides of the same coin. This is from, was a professor of religious studies. Evolution has primarily been an attack on religion by militant atheists who wrap themselves in the mantle of science in an effort to refute all religious claims concerning a creator, an effort that's also been attempted to suppress all scientific criticisms of Darwin's work. We have it all there. To people in this belief system, it feels scientific. It feels logical, right? If they knew they were wrong, they wouldn't be wrong. All right. If you said you were a biologist, you do not get to answer these. But the science teacher in me just couldn't resist, okay? There's multiple choice. All right, who says A? Show of hands. B? Oh, rate it? Okay. Which type of selection is most likely to result in speciation? A, directional selection, B, diversifying selection, C, artificial selection, and D, stabilizing selection. Who says A? By the way, you can't fail this quiz, so you might as well vote. A, B, C, D. Okay, I didn't see lots of on anything. It's B. C is actually not a type of natural selection. It's what humans do to create like dog breeds and stuff. Diversifying is when the selection for a trait goes in two separate directions. Am I okay drinking this? Are you gonna yell at me? Okay, please don't. Only you. Only me? Oh, I feel so special. Okay. Which human ancestor was the first to be found widespread outside of Africa? A, Homo erectus, B, Australopithecus afarensis, C, Homo naledi, and D, Ardipithecus ramidus. All right, A, B, C, D. Oh, nobody went for D. Oh, that's fair. So actually, it is A, Homo erectus. I think the A's had it. There are too many buttons for me. Which state would you expect to find the most endemic species? Okay, A, Florida, B, Texas, C, Hawaii, and D, California. Okay, the Hawaiis have it? Hawaii. It is Hawaii. Why? Yes, it's isolated, and isolation is a key driver of speciation. Excellent. When a scientific theory is proven, it will become a law. Okay, thank you. It is false. It is not a hierarchy, right? They are separate things. And finally, closely related species with external fertilization are likely separated by which reproductive isolating mechanism? Gamete incompatibility, hybrid sterility, mechanical isolation, or behavioral isolation? Okay, who says A? B? C? There's so many not voting. D? Actually, it is A, gamete incompatibility. So external fertilization is when the egg and sperm aren't fertilized inside of a body, but in the environment. And in that case, usually the eggs and sperm are not compatible. So even if a sperm lands on an egg, they don't actually fuse. Okay, these are all questions that I had on my intro bio final exam. So for non-majors, okay? Now, why would I ask you this question? This meme pretty much says it all. Here's the thing. This really bothers me because most people who accept evolution don't understand it either. Why do most people accept evolution? Well, because they've aligned themselves with a tribe that does, and they understand the process of science is reliable, and this conclusion does not interfere with their inherent beliefs, their core beliefs. It's not because they're stupid, and more information won't solve it. It's actually really complicated. It's okay to not understand it. Look, if I wasn't a biologist, I would spend my time doing other things too. But it is then important to, when we're trying to talk to people who disagree, to narrow it down to something like this. It's not necessarily productive. So why do creationists reject evolution? It's not about facts. So what I have here are two different people talking to each other, and what we see is it is a four-person conversation, right? We think it's writers talking to other writers, but it's actually an elephant-motivated conversation. Our biases, our identity, all of those are fueling our selection of facts. We could make a case for nearly anything we want to believe if we are selective enough with our facts. So why do they not accept evolution? It's about the implications. It's about what it means. Accepting evolution to them means the Bible is wrong. then there's no God. They have no purpose in life. And they and their tribe are wrong, and the evil other is right. We all do this, by the way. We all have our things. If I've learned anything about misinformation, is that everybody knows it's a problem, but almost everybody thinks it's an other people problem. Okay, so back to my story. I did not accept evolution because I was a biology major. So I went off to college to be, I wanted to be a vet. So I was biology and chemistry, sorry. I did go to vet school, by the way, and then realized I did not want to spay and neuter my whole life, so I went to graduate school instead. Oh, and I started Prairies on Fire. That was my graduate work. I remember this very clearly. I know memory is flawed, so could I be wrong? Yes, I could be wrong. I was taught that God made man in his image and then made woman out of him to serve him, and that her sin and temptation of him was the cause of everything bad in the world. So she needed to spend the rest of eternity atoning for those sins. I have a very strong mother. And I remember coming home like, Mom, I do not understand. Like, you are telling me that I can do, we're all adults here, you can do anything anybody with a penis can do except for pee standing up, she would tell me. She's wrong about that, by the way. Where there's a will, there's a way. Nevertheless, she's like, Melanie, you can do anything a guy can do. And then my church was telling me this. At one point, the youth minister came to my house to tell me what my place was. I was very confused. So I went to college. And yes, I was learning evolution, but obviously those were lies from the pit of hell, and I was armed with my facts. And I was sitting in ancient world civilization. The professor was talking about the different ancient river civilizations and how each of them had created different gods, and how the gods were a reflection of their environmental conditions. So like environments that were more stable had more peace-loving gods, and those that had like storms and catastrophic and had more wrathful gods. And I remember it happened like in a class period. I was grabbing the desk, and like a mushroom cloud went over my head, and I'm like, holy crap. I mean, maybe man made God. And that was the first time that it ever occurred to me. But wow, did that make sense? Because look, if I was a guy, I would have made that God too. And then I really struggled afterwards because there was a lot I had to undo. My family, my community, the religion, this core part of that belief was central to all of that. And I floundered for a while, and I have to say, I would have loved to have had this. Y'all are very lucky. So, all that's to say, I'm still dealing with this, and it still breaks my heart that we teach young kids this, because honestly, it's a lot of lasting trauma for that. But I will say one more important thing, which is, what wouldn't have changed my mind? Mocking me, calling me stupid. Guarantee it, that would not have worked. I understand the impulse. I understand why people do it, especially on social media. It's so easy to pile on. It's not effective. So, some take-homes here. We can all be fooled. All of us can be fooled. Know how your vulnerabilities and how misinformation works. I want to just talk for a second there about the community aspect. Science works in large part because it is a community of experts who are collecting and evaluating evidence. Evidence is king. If you don't have the evidence or the logic to back up your claims, then you're not going to make it very far. When we learn we were wrong, we change our mind and we grow. But it's expected in the community to disagree respectfully. But the beliefs aren't central to that community. The process is. And so, as much as you can, to cultivate a community that is willing to respectfully disagree, to not other, to be kind and empathetic, and recognize why someone might be believing what they believe, and also have the humility to realize that it might be us that's wrong. With that, thank you very much. I want to thank Skeptical Society of St. Louis and the Ethical Society and like all of the wonderful people here who've helped me get here, so thank you. Sorry? Sure, yeah. Oh, also, I know this is a shameless plug, but I love friendly followers on social media.
Let's give Melanie another big round of applause. That was fantastic. So we have some time for Q&A. I imagine this was a very thought-provoking presentation. I imagine there will be questions from the audience. I've got a microphone. Scott on the other side of the room will have a microphone. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. You talked about the existence of true conspiracies. Can you give us a couple examples?
Yeah, sure, that's a great question. Well, the United States government really did poison alcohol during Prohibition. Volkswagen really did conspire to keep their mileage standards, the true mileage away from government. Actually, the tobacco companies really did conspire, and so did the oil companies.
We've got one right here.
I would really love to get to know you better.
Oh, thanks.
The greatest gift you've given me tonight is some of your lifetime, so thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Would you think about the job that you have now, the role that you're playing now, and in that context, would you think about the very best day you had in that role and what happened to you in that day? And then would you help me out and tell me your very worst day in this role? And how were you able to thrive? Because you're standing here, how were you able to get through that worst day in that role?
Well, that is an amazing question. What comes to mind actually, I think is a little bit of both. When I first got to my college, I was committee, and I went to the task force meeting and I said, is anybody doing anything on the grounds? And they said, no, that's a great idea, so why don't you do it? So to their credit, they let me do it. I transformed something like a quarter of campus into food gardens, rain gardens, native gardens, meadows. We built a student research program that found that even in urban areas, these sustainable practices could increase the diversity and abundance of native pollinators. All that was wonderful, but the process of that, I faced so much backlash on campus from certain people that they literally would sabotage my work, called campus police on me. It got really nasty. To the point where it lives on now, but I had to back away. So that was some of my worst days. But that actually caused me to change, in part, to what I'm doing now, which is focusing on teaching critical thinking. Because to me, the underlying thinking errors that are behind many of our issues are will help us, if we address them, will help us solve the problems. In that, so I'm not saying critical thinking can solve all of our problems, but I'm saying it's our best chance. So after that, what I did was try to drill down as much as possible and address those underlying issues.
Great.
Yeah, that was really great question.
So for someone like you who has studied misinformation and gotten to where you are, what are you most susceptible to? Can you see it? I mean, I can't see it in myself, yeah. And I try, but I think I am in an echo chamber, but I think it's the right one to be in or something like that.
Yeah, that's really beautifully said. Look, if I knew what I was wrong about, I wouldn't be wrong. Do I know what I'm wrong? If I knew what I was wrong about, I wouldn't be wrong. I would say, for me, the biggest thing is that I used to take being wrong much more personally. And did you read Adam Grant? Okay, love Adam Grant. He said something to the effect of, if you can embrace the joy of being wrong, you can anchor your identity more to wanting to get it right than be right. And that hit me so hard, the joy of being wrong. Like, wow. So, I try and I'm hoping the willingness to be open to change my mind. That's it. Look, if I'm wrong about something, please tell me. Because I literally, we only know if somebody tells us, right? What are those?
Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, it was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question is related to little bit politics. Okay, so I have noticed all across the world, so many politicians and political party, they try to influence voters and their respective citizens based on religious ideologies, okay, and that's how they try to win. So do you have any thoughts like how we can create awareness among those communities, like do not fall into those traps? You know, like you said, using critical thinking or something. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I don't know if this gets to the root of your question, but something that really stands out to me is one of the most important lessons in critical thinking is separating objective from subjective claims, or supernatural claims from those that can be tested. So basically the idea of falsifiability. Students will come to me with creationist beliefs or intelligent design. And so just starting off with this idea of, well, you can't test for a supernatural creator, or you can't test for like an inherent feeling. So what can you test for? I'll play games with them too, by the way. So I use what I call the training wheels approach, which is using non-triggering beliefs to get there. So like, for example, Pythagoras. Okay, Pythagoras thought that when you farted, you lost your soul. So he actually wouldn't eat beans, for example. But so I tell my students that, and they laugh, and I'm like, okay, test that. They're like, wait, what? I'm like, no, seriously, test it. And literally every time, what happens is something like, well, do I lose my soul when I burp? Like, I don't know, you're testing this, you tell me. Well, my dog farts. Does my dog have a soul? Like, I don't know. Or my favorite, if somebody else farts and I breathe it in, do I get part of their soul? They get really creative. And the whole point is somebody will eventually go, well, wait a minute, what's a soul? How do you measure a soul? Right. I didn't trigger. I didn't bring up God or a supernatural creator. What I did do is get them to start thinking about, this is the kind of claim I can't test. So then values are another one. Like, there are ways to get at those things, but they're not objective. They're not falsifiable. So even if what I can get my students to do is separate those things from things that are evidence-based and saying, this might be important to you. It might even be true, but we'll never know, and it's not evidence-based, so don't use evidence to support it. This is where the evidence bucket is. So just like sorting the buckets, falsifiable versus unfalsifiable. And using humor if you can. Cats and farts are universally funny. It's a true story.
I think you're making an assumption that the soul can't be measured. And in fact, I read a book, I can't for the life of me remember I think I could find it in my library. But it was a very interesting book about an investigation about the soul. Now, how would you find out whether the soul exists or not? You try to measure it. Well, what they eventually, after a number of other possibilities, they decided to measure the mass of people as they were about to die.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, when people die, there's a small loss in mass. And that was attributed, scientific measurements, to the evolution of the soul. The soul went off to heaven, the body lost mass, and it's a wonderful book. I love the whole idea of trying to get at a spiritual question with a scientific measurement. I don't know if you've read that book or if you knew about those measurements.
I know about the study, and it's my understanding that that's been debunked. It was water weight.
Well, it's not debunked. It was a real measurement.
The book is Spook by Mary Roach.
No, it isn't.
That also had it in it.
I love Mary Roach. That was a study that was done. I'm forgetting the name of the scientist, but it's basically water weight. I mean, and there's something else when I'm with my students. I'm like, look, I'm not saying souls aren't real. I am saying that we can't objectively measure it. If you can, then again, win your Nobel Prize. But otherwise, it's just something that, put over here. Yeah.
Good. Do we have any more questions from the floor? Let's give Melanie another round of applause. Oh, please. Do you have time for one more, Melanie?
Yeah, one more, sorry.
One more.
Hi, yeah,
Hi.
I really enjoying your talk. So one of the things actually you mentioned that you kind of felt some kind of challenges and pressure from some special interest groups, right? From some industries and stuff, So that's actually a big concern because, a lot of times scientists came up with some, very nice drug would be much cheaper, and later on they were found dead, aka suicide, and those are their opinions that they were killed because they were standing against the system. Latest, we saw Boeing actually, 2 of the whistleblowers died back to back within a period of within a span of 3 months. Again, suicide and all those things, and none of their families agreed to that. So how do you think is to deal to deal with it? Whenever somebody's coming up with some very new ideas or something which could change the world, and they are killed. So it's a very intricate question, and there is no right or wrong answer, but still something in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so conspiracy theories can really thrive in times of uncertainty. They give us simple answers to complicated problems. And there's conspiratorial thinking is fascinating. It tends to link together coincidences to form an overarching narrative, and then once the narrative is in place, it's basically unfalsifiable. It becomes immune to evidence. We interpret all evidence to be part of a conspiracy. Especially in those times of uncertainty when there's breaking news or we don't know yet. I think the right answer is we don't know. Until we know, we don't know. By the way, I was wrong is an important thing to say, and so is I don't know.
Great. Thanks again, Melanie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and thanks again to the Skeptical Society for co-hosting with us this evening. Thanks to the Ethical Society for making this fantastic building available to us. Wish you all a lovely night, and please do offer a donation on your way out if you wish to. Good night, everybody.
Did you want to plug tomorrow morning?
Oh, yes. Oh, Melanie just reminded me. She will be back in this room for another completely different presentation tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. You are all warmly welcome to join us if you have not yet had your fill of this amazing content.
Favorite stories, and so favorite story. All right. No pressure.